The following program was provided by an independent producer solely responsible for its content. The opinions expressed do not necessarily represent the views of this station, its staff, board of directors, or underwriters.
Every day, citizens around the country are faced with new dilemmas. Dilemmas that affect them profoundly. Whether it's injustice, discrimination, falling through the cracks, scandals and cronyism, balances of power, ethics, religious freedoms, state versus citizens, and unfunded mandates, and the list goes on and on and on. Welcome to Speak Up. It's directed at those who have fallen through the cracks, and it gives them a voice. It's your turn to speak up. To stand up and fight back.
Welcome to another edition of Speak Up. I'm Kevin Avard, Senator for District 12 here in New Hampshire. We've recently had guests to talk about the pipeline, and we're trying to get a vast number of people from across the district to talk about their perspective of the pipeline. We've had representatives, we have a representative today, and as well as stay-at-home moms. And what the pipeline means to them, and the information that Kinder Morgan and the other people, pro-advocates for this pipeline, are talking about, and how it's being perceived amongst the people. This show is designed to give the people a voice, and today I have Kaela Law, a stay-at-home mom from Pelham, I believe, and Representative Gregory Smith. We're just going to call him Greg for the show, and I want to welcome you both to the show. Thank you for coming on the show.
Thanks for having us.
And we recently had a pipeline rally up in Concord, and there were a lot of people out there, and I heard your name was voiced out there by Representative Flanagan.
Yep.
And you're very active with this whole pipeline issue. When did you get involved, and why?
I got involved in January. I got a knock on my door, and it was one of the land survey agents, and he handed me a bunch of envelopes and said, "Oh, we didn't mail these to you because we don't have your mailing address, because I have a P.O. box." So I found out everything in January. Okay. And just started doing a bunch of research because I wanted to know more about what they wanted to do with my property. And it led me to the New Hampshire PipelineAwareness.org page. And I got connected with a bunch of people who were also fighting it. Just in the beginning, I just wanted information, just information sharing. And one thing led to another, and just started really advocating that this pipeline is not a good idea.
Now, you own some property in Pelham.
Yeah, it's actually been rerouted, I believe, away from my property now. Okay. But it was first scheduled to go straight across the back part of my property, and I believe it's been moved. What Pelham decided to do was to anywhere there was conservation land across, so it goes, there's the power line corridor in the middle. So my property's on one side, then there's the power lines, and then on the other side is conservation land. So the town of Pelham has put a proposal forward to get wherever there's a chance to put it on conservation land and not someone's private property, they've opted to do that. But it hasn't been accepted yet by Kinder Morgan, so we're still waiting on it.
Now, recently, I believe I sent you an email that I received from folks from the town of Hollis that they thought that they were going to protect their conservation property, but apparently it's still in the a possibility that it could go through Beaverbrook or that area, if that's what I read correctly. Yeah,
anybody who has been on the route before and it's been changed a little bit, it's a moving target, this pipeline. So it's not a set in stone route that they have right now, which is making it really hard for us to do any kind of research.
Did they actually survey your land, though? Did they go on?
No, I denied survey access. I chose to deny them survey. I didn't want anyone coming on my property because their intent is not to survey. It's not when they ask you for a survey, it's not to figure out where your boundaries are like a typical survey. They want to take soil samples, drill down, do whatever they have to do to figure it's testing and stuff. So I opted to not have that done. Because their bottom line is that they would like to take my property, and I'm not okay with that.
And that's an issue for a lot of people, and that's one of the galvanizing things about this whole pipeline. And Representative Smith, this is your first term. You've also been serving on local boards?
I was on the budget committee for Pelham for several years, and then correct. This is my first term, so I'm halfway through my first term as a state representative.
State representative. Well, thank you for your service.
Thank you very much.
And Kaela, thank you very much for coming on the show too, because this is part of, if people don't speak up, they won't be heard. And this is the whole idea of this show. But, you know, what I said before is true. It seems as though, as I was looking at that rally, you were looking at progressives, libertarians, conservatives, liberals, and everything in between in that whole crowd yelling, hey, you know, listen, the people don't want this pipeline going through their private property for various reasons. And the politicians need to understand that when these groups can get together, you should not ignore that.
Yeah, I completely agree. And for me, it's been an interesting journey because when I first heard about the pipeline, my reaction was, you know, in Pelham, we already have a pipeline, the Concord Lateral. We've already got the power line easement. It was my understanding that the pipeline was going to run under the power lines. What's the harm? Again, we already have one. But then it's been people like Kaela who have provided a lot of detailed information to say, well, wait a minute, this isn't the same thing. This is not the old Concord Lateral. This is a much larger project.
Right.
This is a project that is not going to run under the existing power line easements. It's actually running adjacent. It may cross back and forth, but it's running adjacent. So that's requiring brand new right-of-way, brand new potential eminent domain.
Correct.
It's a completely different animal. And then you get back to the fact that at least Concord Lateral was a project to benefit New Hampshire. This one, you know, it's going to benefit Massachusetts. It's going to benefit certainly the European natural gas customers. But in terms of benefiting New Hampshire,
Right.
I haven't seen it. And again, people like Kaela and some of her colleagues who have helped identify some of that information.
And it's really interesting how important you are and people like yourself are that go that extra mile. I mean, we're serving in office. I'm senator, you're state rep, and you know we're doing our committees and we're doing everything we can, and we have certain access to certain things. But there's the fact that you can sit down and focus and do research that actually comes back to us. We do listen. It does get to us. When 100 emails come to us, that's cool. Sometimes reps see it, but you know, don't forget letters, right?
Letters.
Coffee cups. that's our little secret, right? Yeah. Right, we're on TV. But you want to get the attention, and that's important work. That research that you do, and I don't have that amount of time to do that.
It was research for myself at first because I have a 2-year-old at home. So I wanted to make sure if it was going to be so close to my house, because it's hard to fight stuff like this. You
Right.
know, chances are it could come through, you know, so you want to make sure it's safe, hold the company accountable for everything. I wanted to learn every little facet of what goes into pipelines and
Right.
the construction process and all that. And then that turned into, well, if I know this stuff, people in my town who live near the pipeline route also should know this stuff. And we started a Facebook page just to get as much information out as possible.
Right.
And it all spiraled from there. It led from there, you know. Then we decided to get a petition to Governor Hassan, and we got over 10,000 signatures on that petition. We went to the State House a couple weeks ago, last week, or
Right.
whatever, you know, and
We got it on film.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and we actually handed the governor, there were other groups like yourself early on where they sent me letters and questions to hand directly to the governor. And she was gracious enough to let Representative Parison and I to go in her office and hand them to her. And basically we walked out of there with the understanding that, you know, all tides raise all ships, you know, and that was her beat on this, is that we need the gas. But the whole point is we handed her the questions, and I don't know if any of those people got a reply directly, but that's the whole point of that.
Kevin, and I agree that New England as a whole most likely needs more incremental natural gas capacity. But
Incremental is the key word.
But that's the problem with this project, is that it's not clear to what extent it's actually going to benefit New Hampshire. And more importantly, if the objective is to bring more natural gas in to be able to fire natural gas fired power plants, there are other companies. I think Spectre Energy has 2 projects that use existing right-of-way in the ground they're going to go from a, I don't know, 20-inch pipe to a 30-inch pipe, something like that. But they're not going to have to go dig up somebody's backyard to do it,
Right.
seize their property in the same way. To me, Northeast Direct should be the last project we're doing. After these other projects get built, after we've done everything we can from a conservation perspective, we're nowhere near being able to justify building a project like Northeast Direct, through brand new greenfield rights of way
Right.
in New Hampshire, and again, benefiting Massachusetts, benefiting other parts of the region.
Where you're if we're going to tap into it,
If we're gonna tap-
even if we're going to tap
and
into
so
it. Maybe
New
Keene
Ham-
might be able to, I'm not sure, but
New Hampshire pays the price,
Right.
and Massachusetts reaps the benefits, along with Maine and the rest of the region.
and the issue that I've always had, and I actually ran on this, and I'm sticking to my promise, and I'm keeping it, is the fact that without property rights, this whole idea of liberty and freedom is really just a mental exercise. It's just, if you can't hold on to what you've earned in your property, none of it
And
makes
to
sense.
clear up a little bit of this too, a lot of people think that you have acres and acres of land here. You don't have acres and acres of land. Some people have a quarter of an acre. One of my friends' neighborhoods in Hudson, half of their property would become an easement. How are you supposed to turn around and sell a house
Right.
when the realtor says, oh, and by the way, half of this property is actually a Kinder Morgan utility easement, and there's a high-pressure pipeline buried 20 feet away from the house?
Right. And nobody gets a straight answer from that. Now, what are your insurance costs going to be? Will you be able to insure? What are the equity in your house going to?
They won't even answer how they are paying for the property that they take for their easement. No
Right.
one knows how they're going to get their settlements.
Is it going to be 1 time the value, twice the value, 5 times the value? We actually, Senator Sanborn and I and a couple other senators, we tried to put in an amendment so that there would be, at least if it was taken, there would be a handsome reward for the property. But there's 5 of us that are really sticking together on this in the Senate. So we need more senators, right, to help us out with this. But none of the questions are being answered, and it is affecting people's individual properties. And it seems like the big corporations, and I never thought I'd be saying this being a Republican,
Yeah.
right, are coming in and just kind of steamrolling, and they're not listening.
The problem is they had these open houses back in spring,
March,
the first ones.
something like that, yeah.
And you went and you asked a question, you got an answer. And you thought, oh, okay, whatever, I got my answer. And then you went home and did a little bit of research and found out that answer was a complete lie.
Yeah.
They've lied already, so the only thing we can do now is expect every word to come out of their mouth.
Oh,
It's
we're
gonna
hearing
be a lie.
from all the people everywhere, from just serving in their local municipalities, saying, look, they're lying to us. We got one guy, Bob Hamilton, up in Ridge. He says, he just calls him right out. He says, look, I got all the information. Don't try to lie to me. And as soon as you start lying to me, I'll call you on it. And it's not 2 minutes into the conversation that they're trying to snowball, the local officials. And so they're, from Podunk, and they're not smart people. They can't do the research themselves.
Or just do a play on words. So they say all the time, well, we need this to get cheap Marcellus gas here. But if you do any kind of research, you know that we're already getting Marcellus gas, shale gas here, and it's coming through the Concord lateral and everything. But they don't they don't say that.
One of the
They try and lead you to believe that you need, any way they want, they try and lead you to believe that we need this pipeline, and we don't.
One of the things that I want to bring up, and I'm in this, and we can talk about other issues, but there was a tracker. A tracker basically goes around during political campaigns, and they work for one party or the other party. And there was a tracker. His name was Lucas Meyer, and he was working on I believe for Blue Hampshire or somebody like that, and now he's working for Kinder Morgan, and it just troubles me that the fact that the governor hasn't come out against the pipeline, knowing how important the property rights are. So I will definitely throw that person under the bus, and if you have anybody else, you're very welcome to do so. But it's just interesting how he's actually going out advocating for this at the same time working for one particular party, and this issue is not a partisan issue. We got a lot of people coming together. I call him the Colonel, Jim McConnell.
Yeah.
I love the guy. He says it like it is, and then we have people like Peggy Heward, When these people agree, it's, you've
When
got
we
to
went
pay
around
attention.
getting the petition signatures, it wasn't, I wouldn't classify the signees of the petition as anti-pipeline groups or some people are environmental activists.
Sure.
Some people are just more conscious of the environment. Tea Party Republicans were signing this petition
Right.
because they know that the business sense isn't there for it, you know? And I don't know
And
why Governor
private
Hassan
property.
hasn't come out yet, because she just got the 10,000 signatures and there's pressure on her now.
Has she said anything about it?
She said, kind of like, I oppose until they start answering questions, until the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission starts answering questions.
So it was very interesting. I spoke out against the pipeline at a FERC event in Ringe a couple of months back. And at the time, it was interesting because all the local officials, the local representatives who showed up or affected by the pipeline, we were very, very clear on our position on the pipeline. I mean, we hear from our locals, on our voters, we know exactly what their position is. I actually, in a way, was impressed with our with Congresswoman Kuster and I know Senator Ayad. I'm not sure about Shaheen, but they gave very, I don't want to say evasive, but equivocal. They didn't come out one way or the other. It sounded like they were against it, but they hedged. Now, since then, I'm not sure if Kuster's changed her opinion. I think she did come out against it. I know Ayad has said some things.
Well, she voted for something that would allow it to happen. And of course, at the rally, her representative said, well, they misinterpreted her vote.
It's so, again,
In other words, the pressure's working, right?
right. They're definitely having to move and actually make a decision. And I would assume, for example, Kuster's going to run again this year or in 2016. This is going to be a huge issue in southern New Hampshire, and this is where a big part of New Hampshire 02 is. So she's going to have to make a decision on who she's going to support.
One way or another. And
One way or the other,
I believe Jack Flanagan, a representative from Brookline, is considering running for that seat, and he's been very supportive, of legislation to, either stop, hinder, or whatever. So that's going to be an issue for District 12. This is really important.
Kevin, there's one other thing that we haven't talked about also. It's been in the news. I don't know if everybody necessarily follows the financial news, but Kinder Morgan as a company is under some very, very severe financial problems right now. And I don't want to say that they're going out of business or anything. I don't want to start any rumors. But again, this is all public information. They are having severe financial problems. The energy markets in general, all those companies are struggling. My concern as a legislator is, let's say that somehow or another they get permission to build. They are making a lot of promises. They're making promises around the quality of the pipe and how they're going to construct it and all the safety.
How they're going to maintain it.
How they're going to maintain it, how they're going to pay for what no doubt will be some expensive eminent domain fights. That's not a company that I see right now is in a position to financially be able to back up everything. It'll be interesting to see how that plays out over the next year or two.
And you wonder how, if they succeed, how they're going to make the landowners whole.
Exactly.
When this all started, again, it wasn't that I was ambivalent. I was unsure. And so I did my own research. I actually went to the Pelham place, and I saw the gate was open, and I had my state senate plate.
The compressor station.
Compressor
Compressor
plate.
station,
So I
right.
drive in there, and obviously there was somebody there, and he saw my plates, and I said, I'm Senator Avard. I really want to get a handle on what's going on here. So I got a grand tour of the facility, and it looked clean. I saw the filter systems, I saw the jet engine inside in the double walled, and I asked, what was the noise factor, and he said basically at 50 yards it's about the sound of a lawnmower. I saw the pipes coming up and out in Beaver Brook, and across the brook was a retirement center. And so, I left there after he gave me an understanding on how the pipe was and how they seal it and how that there's an electrical current, the whole 9 yards. It gave me a good perspective, and I thought the guy was, he didn't know who I was until that very moment. He gave me a good understanding of what they do and how they bore under the brooks and things like that. So, he was a good advocate for it. It was his job. But that compressor station is not my biggest concern, as is going over somebody's property or going through somebody's property or going near a school or going through a conservation area. You have to dig it. You have to blast. You've got to affect the environment at some point.
It's called the Granite State for a reason.
Yeah, exactly. So, and when you find ledge, you've got to blast. And so, you know, you have to keep doing research. And of course, when people like yourself come out and help, it really does help.
And Kaela, that brings up another point I think we talked about at one point, which is most of Pelham does not have town water. You know, we rely on wells. And I've heard several concerns about the fact that blasting can impact wells, and how do we account for that? How do we make sure that, you know, if there is blasting and the well has a problem 6 months from now, do these people still get compensated?
You have to factor, yeah, you have to if you are going to get any compensation for this, you have to factor it into the pre-construction costs, the settlement that you come, the one-time payment. That's the impression that we're under. But it might not even be as dramatic as needing a new well. Blasting causes sediment to move around in your well, and that can come up through your piping, and it could go through your washer machine and wreak havoc on all your appliances. So you'd have to get a new. It just kind of some things is really small things, but it's a headache that we don't need to be dealing with,
Right.
especially since the pipeline is not needed. It's a $5 billion project. It was supposed to go straight through Massachusetts in more of a straight line.
But they successfully fought it.
They not successfully fought it. They gave a lot of opposition. So Kinder Morgan moved their pipeline up to New Hampshire thinking they'd meet with less opposition. But in moving it up into New Hampshire, they moved it in unindustrialized territory. There's no power plants up here to meet it. So on top of the $5 billion costs of the pipeline construction itself, you have to factor in the eminent domain, you know, negotiating with landowners, whatever that total amounts to. And then you have to also factor in building brand new power plants so that they'll be situated near the pipeline. It doesn't make sense, especially when there are at least 16 other pipeline projects for New England right now that are not, and the Kinder Morgan pipeline, like you said, is the only one that's not already in an existing pipeline easement.
And they just want to ship it across the seas. You know, that's what we're hearing.
Yeah, I mean, I saw some interesting math early on. There was a gentleman in Wyndham who came up with some of these numbers, but any reasonable, even fairly aggressive growth forecast for natural gas consumption, it appears that we can meet that with these other projects. And we're not even talking conservation yet. We're talking about some of these other projects. The only logical conclusion is they want to be able to reverse some of the Maritimes pipeline, run it out through Canada as liquefied gas and ship it to Europe. Well, that's great, but if they actually come out and say that's the plan, then they lose their FERC, whatever they call it, certificate of need or whatever it is that they need in order to be able to go eminent domain everybody's backyard.
Remember, it was going to start off as a 36-inch pipeline, right? Now they're cutting it back to, what, 34 or 32?
30 is the latest I'd heard, but
30.
As Kaela says, it keeps changing. I mean, that's something else I worry about is, okay, let's say they put in place a plan, 30-inch pipeline, they move forward, they get all their permits. Oh, you know what? We're changing it to a 36, you know, and you've already done all of these other approvals, so why not a 40? You know, it's not clear how that. I think for Kinder Morgan, it's all about checking the boxes, keeping the process and the paperwork moving forward, and they'll say anything or do anything or buy anyone off, or and that's how this game is played, unfortunately.
The other thing that's been changing is the premise of the project. So ISO New England, the regional power grid operators, called for more natural gas pipelines because of the constraints. We don't have an energy crisis, clear that up. We don't have an energy crisis in New England. We have a winter reliability problem. So we need to come up with a winter fix. It's only happening on a few days out of the year.
Somebody's going to hire you.
Yeah.
I guarantee it.
Well, so now I lost my train of thought.
Oh, I'm sorry. We don't have an energy problem.
We don't have an energy crisis. We have the winter reliability problem. So we need a winter fix. And the ISO New England called for more pipelines to get rid of the constraints that happen, but they only happen during the winter. So there's question if more pipeline would even really solve the electric generation issues that were occurring right now anyway. The other part of that, okay, so then there are no electric distribution center customers for this pipeline. Nobody has signed contracts. Power generators don't sign contracts with pipelines because it cannot be part of their energy bid to get. So, okay, I talked to Granite Ridge.
So you're impressing me. Go ahead, keep going.
I talked to Granite Ridge Power Plant, the one in Londonderry, which is the only one that's moderately close to up here. And I asked if why haven't they signed on yet. Here's this pipeline project. Why haven't you signed on a contract? Power plants buy on the spot market. So day-to-day prices. They're not going to lock themselves into a 20-year pricing because for 9 months out of the year, they have really good pricing because there's no capacity constraints. Because the capacity constraints happen in the winter when home heating customers are using the gas on the pipelines also.
Go ahead.
This actually gets into a much broader problem around a lack of an energy policy, because all these things are interrelated. And by the way, Kaela, I'm pretty impressed because she's starting to get into how the wholesale markets work on energy, merchant generators.
Someone scoop her up and get her a job.
So basically what she's getting to is that the problem right now, and again, a lot of good things with deregulation, some bad things. One of the challenges is that the merchant generators, the companies that actually generate the power, have no financial incentive to sign a long-term contract and lock in a price. Before deregulation, PS&H could do that and it might have made sense. But if you do it now, you run the risk of having more expensive power that you can't sell because everybody else is buying at spot. So the way the market works, all these guys are buying at spot. They don't want to sign long-term contracts. There's some problems with that. But again, that's a problem for New Hampshire energy policy, New England energy policy. The pipeline is only one part of that. Again, there's a lot of other things going on.
What would the governor's role be as far as this policy is concerned?
Well,
Come up with one?
So first of all, one thing people need to understand is that, we have a regional grid. The electrons that get generated in New Hampshire go to Massachusetts. They don't care. They don't stop at the state border. So any solution is going to be a regional one. I think what I would want to see the governor do is work, or any governor, is work on a long-term plan that looks at a combination of what power is required, both in terms of gas as well as electricity, what role renewables can play. I don't believe renewables are a cure-all, but they can help out in some situations. What kind of energy fuel mix we want? What's the right combination of clean coal, natural gas, nuclear, biomass, solar? Again, what are these things that they can do? And so again, it's going to be we're trying to solve, as Kaela's saying, for a couple of days a year where it's extremely cold and most of the natural gas is needed for heat, much of that in Massachusetts. A better solution would be to figure out how to handle that peak pricing, that peak demand, and smooth it out instead of building new infrastructure to meet those peaks for a couple of days a year.
Like a dual fuel power plant.
Well, I heard that before I was actually coming here on one of the local talk shows. They were talking about the pipeline. They were talking about that very topic, and of course, and how it would be a bridge to renewables. Now that we're getting rid of coal and the whole 9 yards. And so the bottom line is, they're saying that we have a crisis, but they also advertise on that radio show. So my jaundiced view of it all.
Kevin, we didn't, what I think a lot of people don't appreciate, I'm an electrical engineer by education. Mm-hmm. The whole electrical grid is remarkable. We take it for granted. You think about what happens when there's an ice storm, we lose power, and everybody freaks out. It is absolutely amazing that you can flip on a switch and have power 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. It is absolutely amazing. But it took us decades to build this. We're not going to fix this overnight, but that's where we need. Unfortunately, the political cycle doesn't necessarily make that easy, but we need some long-term vision. We need the governors of the region to work together. There's solutions out there, but it doesn't mean going out and building a new pipeline in New Hampshire's backyard.
So we have about 15 seconds. How do people get in touch with you to voice their opinion?
We have a Facebook page, Pelham Pipeline Awareness. Search it, I guess, on Facebook.
And how do they get in touch with your representative?
Probably the best way, Google Greg Smith, State Rep New Hampshire, or something like that, or go to the New Hampshire State Legislative page and be able to find me. I'm on Facebook too, so I friend everybody these days. As long as you're in southern New
Just
Hampshire.
be careful, right?
Exactly, exactly.
Thanks for coming.
Senator.
Thanks for coming on the show. We really appreciate it, and we hope that we'll have some more people on the show as well. So thank you for watching Speak Up, and until next week, we'll see you. Thank you for watching Speak Up, and we want to thank our sponsor, Avard Cleaning. If you have a carpet job, call Avard. They're the best in town. And if you have a story and you want to be heard, contact me, Kevin Avard, at speakupnh@gmail.com. That's speakupnh@gmail.com. We'll get your voice heard. Thanks for watching. Until next week.